Good morning. So another impromptu live. It's going to be on actually how you might grow plants to have your own plant yard sale. Go to flea markets, flea markets, etc. I make some money. This is what I used to do. Hey, hello from the U.S. to the Netherlands. I always have to say this. I love gardening technology that we can chat with people around the globe about vegetable gardening. I think we're all a wonderful bunch of people across the world sharing the passion. So I'm going to wait a couple more minutes, but again, this impromptu is about growing plants to have your own plant sale. And I'm going to talk about this, but this is what I used to do years ago to make extra money so that I could put it into the garden, build out the garden, and it was really, really successful. And this is something anybody can do. And out of just my general paranoia, I assume you guys can hear me okay? Please just let me know you can hear. Just wait a couple more minutes. If you have any quick questions while we wait to get started, throw them out there. And if you have a question, just type question in bold and then go ahead and ask away. So again, the pop-up lives are a little bit easier for my schedule. That's why I just do them whenever I have a break in my schedule. But these are all based on really questions that I get during the week. And a lot of people have watched my previous videos on starting a plant yard sale. They had some questions. So we are going to go over sort of an overview because there's a lot of details, but I am going to try and hit all the steps. And I really believe this is something you all can do. I don't know. Does YouTube correct? It's probably backwards. That's the list. But I'm going to put all this in a video description because this is some of the information about when you would start plants, what plants to grow. This way, you can refer back to the video description. Andrea Rosso asks, are you adding fertilizer to your leeks and onion seedlings? Actually, I have them over here. This is a prop for this video. Yes. So after they germinate, they grow, and they germinate and they're growing for about 10 to 14 days. I start using very dilute fertilizer in here. And I do that every 2 weeks. If they look like they're struggling, maybe twice in that 2-week period. All right, well, let's get started in a couple of questions. So every state, every county can be different if you're doing a plant yard sale. Now, in my area, you're allowed to sell plants that you grow. If I were to be sending them in the mail to other places outside the states, I'm going to need a nursery license. So you're going to have to check that out. I mean, the whole idea is you're growing basic plants. You're not importing plants. You may be dividing plants. That's what I also used to do. I used to divide my hostas and actually sell them for $3 or $4 a plant. I would just pot them up. And the divisions were a good way to make some money too. But these are about starting transplants. So you're not like an ongoing business that's selling plants. Hopefully it grows and that will be, something that maybe you can make an income from. But you're going to just have to check it out. Most of the time, you're okay doing a plant yard sale, but I don't want to tell you because there's 50 different states and all that. 6,000 euros last year following the idea of selling plants. And you must have watched the video that was, geared towards this. All right, so let's get started. Best-selling plants, tomatoes and peppers, Kitty W asks. We're going to go over all that. So this is officially titled How to Make $1,000 Selling Garden Transplants. Now, I did this for years. I sold plants back then at $1 a plant. They were in containers about this size. I would, pot them up, and easily at each sale, I would make $400 to $800. And I would do a couple of them. I would do my plant sale on Saturday and Sunday. I would do a flea market that was in our neighborhood in the parking lot where the Giant was, where I used to live. And that was like maybe $15 for the space, really inexpensive. And then sometimes I did one flea market at some church that was local to me. And that's how I would sell the plants, and easily $1,000. And I was selling them for $1 a plant. So let's kind of go backwards. We're going to start with advertising. So I just would take the plants out, put them in my front driveway, and advertise. So I would do, your standard yard sale signs that you would see, on a telephone pole or somewhere. Start putting those signs out on a Wednesday. You don't want them sitting out there for a long time. They get blown down, they get rained on. People take them. I had that one year. But put them out on Wednesday. So you have your signs out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then advertise your sale. I recommend 8 to 1 p.m. on Saturday, and then 8 to 1 p.m. on Sunday. And that would be your main sale. You could do additional ones if you want. But when you're doing this, remember your plants are growing. So if you're going to have a strategy of doing more than just a plant sale at your house, you have to really set this up within a 2-week period, or your plants are going to overgrow your containers. So you could do your plant yard sale at your home or, a relative's home on Saturday and Sunday. A week later, maybe you do a flea market. That's a good span of time, because you're going to have to hold these plants over and they're going to keep growing. Now, as you get advanced, you can keep plants going, and maybe you do this for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. That's up to you. But today's about really getting started. So I also want you to start small. So I'm going to cover the plants that are the best, talk about other plants, talk about how much you charge, what kind of container you put them in. But start small, test it out. Jolene's garden sold around 250 last year in plants, paid for the shelf, lights, and seeds. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Who couldn't use more money to feed their garden addiction? So, while you're growing some stuff for yourself, grow a handful to sell, and then use that money to buy a seed starting station, put up a fence, buy amendments, all that kind of stuff. Empty nest gardens. Question. I want to have my driveway plant sale Mother's Day weekend, but my last frost is 2 weeks after that. How do I go about hardening off? So we'll talk about that too. The growing period is going to be anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks indoors, and you have to include a week to harden them off. And all I would say to that question is that you're going to have to do a lot of moving. You move them outside when the temperatures are fine, there's no frost, let them harden off a little bit, bring them back in. And hardening off is getting those plants used to the outdoors so they don't burn basically from the sun's ultraviolet rays. And you have to do that because you're also setting up your brand, so to speak. So if you're just doing this for the first time, people are going to want healthy, large transplants. They're going to want to have a good experience. And if they do that, they're going to come back next time if you do it. All right. So that's how you plan using signage. I would also then go on your social media, maybe on that Monday or the previous weekend, announce to people that you're going to have the plant yard sale. And then also do a pre-sale, like maybe on a Thursday or Friday, let's just say 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Invite people that you know or people that see your social media posts to come over, whoever you feel comfortable with, and then sell the plants that way. And that will really kind of get things rolling. And I think you'll have a great experience doing it that way. All right, checking questions. Yeah, it's too late, Tonya, or too early for scarlet runner beans. All right. Yeah, and the pre-sale, Kitty says she loves that idea. It's really important. You want to really advertise the best you can. Maybe you're not on social media. Well, a couple things. Maybe you can grow the plants, but you don't have a great location. Check with family and friends. Maybe you do the plant sale there. Or another way to do it is you do it at your house. And then I just thought of this. I think it'll be a good idea. You start at your house, and then maybe you have a friend in a totally different neighborhood, people there into gardening. You bring your plants over there and you sell there. That could be like your flea markets. That could be your second option. So don't be afraid to kind of check with family and friends. Also, your family and friends may have better social media reach than you do. So you kind of set up the ad, give it to them, and maybe they can advertise for you. So Adriana asks, what is a good size for a transplant? So that is going to vary, but we'll cover that in a second. I'll show you some examples. All right, so we just finished with social media. The other thing that's really important is that when you're doing the plant sale and you have a customer come by, have a way to collect the email address for future sales. So maybe you do this April, May, and then maybe, because a lot of people look for plants for a fall garden, you do it again in August. You want those emails to be, somewhere, at your fingertips so that you can send out an email to these people and let them know, hey, you came to my first yard sale. I'm having a second one in August. Come on back. And Vicky also asks, what's the best size pot for growing? We're going to go over that too. So we are going to cover a lot. This is probably will be an hour. All right, so we have sort of the structure set up. Now, you're going to be selling somewhere around May, end of April, May, at least Maryland Zone 7. Your plant sale will vary. If you're in an area that doesn't have, freezing winters and doesn't have frost, that's okay. Principles are exactly the same. So you have to figure out how to get nice sized transplants growing so that when you go to the sale, you don't have these little tiny plants. People don't want to pay $3 or $4 at Home Depot, but they do. Those plants usually look pretty good. The big box stores, they're pretty good size. If you get them the day that they come out or within that week, after a while, they get beat up. So you are competing with nice looking plants. So you have to have plants that are established. So how do you do that? So I'm just going to go down the list of plants that I would recommend starting with first at your first yard sale. You can add in more exotic plants, more plants that people don't know about, all kinds of different herbs. You can do flowers, fruits, vegetables, etc. But start small. Don't get overwhelmed. Just check for questions real quick. Actually, we'll use this as a starting point. WV, Big Beef. Gary, do you add germination days to the suggested 6 to 8 weeks for tomatoes? I don't. So typically my plants germinate tomatoes within 5 to 7 days. So I just count that as part of the 6 to 8 weeks. If you're waiting for something like lavender or rosemary that takes longer, you could add that in. But when we get to that, I'm saying start those 10 to 12 weeks. So the period of time that I'm saying does include waiting for that seed to germinate, with the assumption that your grow room is at 65 degrees Fahrenheit or a little bit higher. If you're colder than that, you need to add in an extra week or so, or a week or two, because the colder temperatures mean slower germination. Just a side note, Jeannie Nunez asks, could you please do videos on year-long gardening, indoor gardening of tomatoes, peas, and peppers? I would, except I don't do it. So whenever I do videos and do things, I usually do it after I've experimented for a while, been doing it for a while. So I don't want to kind of do a video, but I don't have the experience, so I won't be doing that. However, I am growing tiny Tim tomatoes this year, and I'll be doing a video on that. Do mint seeds need stratification to germinate? All seeds that need a cold period do better if they're stratified. That's putting them in a refrigerator for several weeks. If you don't do that, they still germinate, but the rate isn't as good, and sometimes it takes longer. All right, so let's get started. So you've planned out that you want to do a plant yard sale. It's February. We have February, March, April. That's 12 weeks. And then somewhere, say like May 7th, May 15th, you want to sell plants. Oh, you also don't want to wait too late. Like, check your area. When people start buying in my area, it's May 1st through May 21st. If I waited too long and did a plant sale, June 14th, a lot of people have already bought the plant. So you want to kind of figure that out too. All right. So I'm recommending that you sell all your plants in a single container about this size. This is a good way to go. Put holes in it. You can grow in here directly. You can also pot up into here. You're going to have to probably use plastic. I know some people don't like to do that, but you want to be delivering a product that's not crumbling or falling apart. So you don't want to use paper pots. The peat pots don't really work. So you're probably going to have to use something like this. You don't have to buy nursery pots, Just get whatever kind of fits your budget. I think this is about 10 ounces, and this is a good standard potting up container. You'll get tomato plants that can grow this big, pepper plants like this. Your cucumber plant will come out to here. This is a good size for the sale. Now, in saying that, I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, so $2 a plant. That's what I'm recommending. So everything that's in a single container, you would sell at $2, and I would do 3 for $5. You want to kind of give that discount. So selling 3 of these, $5, that's pretty good. I think you could do that all day, selling your plants. Let me just check for questions real quick. All right. So $2, 3 for $5 as a single container. Let me talk about the plants, and then I'll get more into the different containers and how you might grow them. So you're going to have warm crops A, which are plants that can't take a frost. So I recommend tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant. Those are plants people love to buy. Those are plants people look for. So if you're going to do tomatoes, you want to start them indoors at least 8 weeks, not much past that, before they would actually be at the sale. You don't want your tomato plants growing 10, 12 weeks because they're going to get too big. You're going to have to pot them up. They're going to start flowering. So for tomatoes, about 8 weeks before the plant sale. All right. Eggplants and hot peppers 10 to 12 weeks before the plant sale. And take notes because it's going to vary depending on how you're starting and things like that. But that's generally speaking 10 to 12 weeks for hot peppers and eggplant. Your mild peppers like bell peppers, sweet banana peppers, cubanelles, you can probably do that 8 weeks ahead of time. But that's what people are going to want to see. They're going to want to see nice size. And the question that was asked earlier, you want a tomato transplant. Tomatoes about this big, peppers about this big, eggplant somewhere in there. So you want nice size transplants. And that's the time frame that will, give you the best chance for that. So then we go to our perennial herbs, which are sage, thyme, oregano, mint, chives. There's more than them. But those are the ones that I would recommend to start with. They grow pretty well. They're, pretty easy to grow. You'd want to start those 10 to 12 weeks before they would go outside. And you want to overseed them. Let me step back a second. So when you're seed starting your tomatoes, your peppers, and eggplant, you're going to want to at least put 2 seeds in the starting cells because you don't want to be waiting around for one seed to germinate and it doesn't. So you want to use 2 seeds as you're getting started with this. For your perennial herbs, sage, I don't quite overseed them, but I put in 4 or 5 sage seeds into a container. You can divide them up. Thyme, oregano, mint, and chives I overseed, make a nice plug. When those are a good size, I break them down the middle, transplant them up. So let's actually stop there because I don't want to overwhelm you with too much information at once. So for the one crops like tomatoes, you would start in something like this. All right, these are your standard cells, just like that. There's 72 in here. There's 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. So that's 12 groups of 6 in here. That's important because you're also going to sell this for $2. When we get down to the list of some cool crops like lettuce and spinach, you wouldn't really sell a spinach plant like this for $2. Nobody's going to really want to buy that. You want to give them a good deal. So those plants would be planted in here. It's a 6-pack. And then you would sell that for $2 or $3, depending on what you want to do. So seed starting mix, you can put in 72 pepper plants, 72 tomato plants, 72 eggplant. That's a lot. These would get potted up. That's 72 in here. You do 3 of these. That's over 210 plants times 2. That's $420 right there. That's how quickly the money adds up. So it would look something like this. This is 5 weeks of growth for the tomatoes, and they're getting close to the point that I would pot them up into here, into this cup, and that's how you kind of move things along. Because the problem is going to be not the number of plants you want to grow, it's going to be based on the space. So you have to figure out how much room you have to start. And again, 3 flats like this is going to be over 210 plants. So 6 flats, 410 plants times 2, you're at about $820 right there. When you pot up, you could use these foil trays. You just stack your cups in here. You have your tomato plants in here, and you're trying to time it so that as your tomato transplants, your warm weather crops are growing and getting into size, the frost risk is coming down. The days maybe be in the 50s, and you would have to keep these outside, transition them outside, bring them in at night because they can't be touched by frost. But you are going in steps. You're starting in those smaller cells, you're potting up, and that's how you get, basically your inventory to sell at the plant sale. All right, let me just take a quick look here. If there's any questions. Megan Nichols, what are your thoughts on selling potted flowers at a plant sale? So I'm just showing you kind of how to get the basic plants people want that I think they'll be willing to pay $2 for. But you could do all kinds of other stuff. You could do potted plants. You could sell them for more money. You can go to thrift stores, find pots there, pot plants up into that, do herb pots. You can do all kinds of stuff in addition to this. But I just want to stress for this video that there is a lot of work. Those cells, growing them indoors, potting them up, moving them in and outdoors to get them used to the sun, then growing them out there. So don't overwhelm yourself by starting with too much. Just kind of get started for the first time. All right, so, and then in here, these were started about January 1st. This is oregano. So this is what an overseeded oregano cell looks like. And let me pop this out over here. I don't want to get dirt on my computer. So I would pop one of these out. That was a 6-pack, $2 for each of those. They would go into this cup like this. They would grow for several more weeks. They would get bigger. And now I sell this for $2. So this overseeded cell of oregano, $12 worth of plants. And I could really break this down the middle, put them into the pot, and I turn this into two $2 plants. So you get the idea. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. Again, to stress the main point is you're going to have to start indoors in smaller cells, pot up, unless you have a ton of room or you have a greenhouse. If you have a ton of room or a greenhouse, sometimes it's a good idea to start in something like this. Just let your plants grow and you have them ready to go to the sale. All right, let me check for questions. Kitty W says, I saw another channel that says cards with pictures for each variety. Yeah, so a couple of things. That was later in the video. You can write right on here with a Sharpie. You can say what it is. Often people want to know that it's a cherry tomato, baseball-sized tomato, heirloom tomato. So you want to put information on there. But if you print out something, put it in a binder so that people can look and see pictures, or put it onto some poster board. They really want to see what they're buying. You and I may know what they look like because we've been gardening for a while, but people coming want to see what they're purchasing. And then the earlier question, you can also do flowers. These are Shasta Daisies, same thing. They're in the 6-pack, couple of seeds in there. This cell didn't germinate. I would just pop these out, put them into the cup. That's $2, $4, $6, $8, $10 right there in flowers. If I let these grow longer, put them into a nicer pot, maybe something like this, or I put herbs in here, you could sell this for probably $4 or $5 pretty easily. All right, so let's go to perennial herbs that take 12 weeks. So just to kind of get us back on track, perennial herbs, 10 to 12 weeks, sage, thyme, oregano, mint, and chives. And then perennial herbs that are going to take about 12 weeks are going to be your rosemary and lavender, and they are really big sellers. Those are seeds you probably do want to stratify. That means put them in the refrigerator for a couple of weeks. It may be too late for that, so just go ahead and try and plant them now. But rosemary and lavender needs a good 12 weeks. They're really slow growers. And I put 3 or 4 seeds, lavender, rosemary, into, let's just keep one of these out, into these. And then I pot up after that. All right. So then you have warm crops B. So tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, 6 to 8 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks, depending on what you're growing. The next warm crop group that people love are cucumbers, squash, and zucchini. Those are the three mainstays. You can certainly add more. However, they grow really fast. So you want to start those about 4 to 5 weeks before they would get to the plant sale. And if you can, start them in something like this, because they grow really fast. And starting, a squash in something like this, it's going to quickly outroot this, and then you're going to have to pot it up. So you really want to have a strategy to start them in something bigger like this. I sell these at my seed shop. I always talk about them. Nice large size. You could start all of those crops, the cucumber, squash, zucchini in here. Just pop them out when they get to a size, put them into this cup. And you would use those bigger cells because, one, you probably all have done this. If you're using something like this, which works, and you have the round cups in here and you're moving them around, a lot of times they fall over. So I like starting in something like this. They even fit in there. They're not going to fall over. But typically they go into that big flat like this, if it's the small cells or the big cells, and it's easy to move around. And that's something you want to keep in mind, is that you're going to have to be moving these flats outside and inside. When they get to size, maybe they're staying outside, a frost is coming. You don't want to have to be picking up tons of little trays like this and bringing them in. You want to have them in the biggest type of container you can. In fact, I use basically totes that are like probably twice this size. The edges are only about 6 or 8 inches tall, and they would be for the totes that slide under your bed and stuff like that. I would just put the cups in there when the plants are bigger. It was a lot easier to bring in that tote than it was a bunch of these flats. And if you're using a tote and your plants are outside, whatever flat or tray they're in, you have to have drainage, or ultimately they're going to drown. So when it rains and stuff like that. Also, water sitting in the container that you have your plants creates a humid environment, and there's a greater risk that your tomatoes get leaf spot and diseases. You definitely want clean plants too, because this is your brand, this is your yard sale. All right, let me check for questions. Let me just see where I am here. Warm crops B. All right. Question: at what temperatures start moving outside? Outside to stay depends on the plant. The perennial herbs, lettuces, spinach, which I'll get to, can take cooler temperatures. So my plants, all of them, I try and get out towards the middle of April, so they're getting the sun, that they're getting a couple weeks of growing. Tomatoes and peppers, maybe they go out May 1st with a plan that they're going to get 2 weeks for May 15th. But you have to pay attention to the weather. If a frost is coming in, you got to bring everything in that's not frost tolerant. William asks, what's a Linera plant? I don't know. Maybe somebody can answer that for him. Apostolos. Yes, I am growing chives. I just started them, so I haven't shown them yet. All right. So warm crops B, cucumber, squash, zucchini. This would also include melons. If you want to grow watermelons or cantaloupe, 4 to 5 weeks, 2 seeds per larger container. Thin them down to 1. You can give people 2 plants, but you want to let them know that you don't want to grow 2 zucchini plants together. You don't have to get rid of the extra plant, but you don't want to seed single seeds and then you have all these gaps because they didn't germinate. Your goal is to really have that inventory. All right. Let's see, 30 minutes in. Now, some other plants that you could put into here would be peas, beans, or sunflowers. So if you're going to do peas, 3 in here, people would probably pay $2 for a group of 3 because those pea plants are really good to produce. Same thing with beans, 3 in here, and I would sell that for $2. If you feel like maybe that's too much because they grow so easy, then just charge $1. People will appreciate that. And then sunflowers. Sunflowers, I don't start indoors. I start them outdoors. So if you have the timing right, you can start growing sunflowers in there. And usually I grow like the mammoth sunflowers. All right. And then, you know, these right down here, these are all perennial flowers. These are different perennial flowers. They would all be $2 a plant, except for the ones right here. These might be snapdragons. I would sell these as a six pack for $2. They just grow really well. These are Gerber Daisies. Forget what those are. More Shasta Daisies. So this is a flat of 72. We'll talk about that in a second. And, you know, again, this is another $100, $140 worth of plants. So you can definitely do flowers. And I'm going to say it again. Don't get overwhelmed starting all kinds of different things. Use what I've been saying in here as the basic, you know, plants. So next you get to your six pack that you're going to sell for $2. This could be six pack of any kind of lettuce. I recommend the loose leaf lettuce. You have red romaine. You have green lettuces. You have red lettuces. You have black seeded Simpson, which is just a black seed. It's still a green lettuce. But you could have different varieties in here. Don't overdo it, but a mix of loose leaf lettuces are nice. And then I would just sell this for $2, maybe $3, and, you know, see how it goes. See how it goes in the sense that if people aren't buying something or they tell you it's too expensive, that might be just one or two people. But if you're getting comments that, you know, it seems too expensive or whatever, don't be afraid to say, all right, let me adjust the price. It's not like it's not an argument you have to win. Like, you're trying to figure out in your area what helps you out, what helps the people buying out, and you kind of got to do that by doing your first plant sale. You might want to charge a little bit more. Maybe you're in an area where you can get $3 for a tomato transplant that can't be found somewhere else. And that's perfectly reasonable because you're spending all that time growing it. You're growing a variety that isn't readily available. So you could also, you know, charge more maybe for certain heirloom type plants that people can't find in places. So this would be great for spinach, lettuces, arugula. Well, first of all, spinach, lettuce, 4 to 6 weeks inside, transitioning outside, ready for the sale. Arugula grows really quickly. That probably will be ready within 4 weeks, but those are 3 kind of leafy greens that you can sell right out of these. Now, if you were to buy, you know, these 12 cells of 6, we do sell them. I think, don't quote me on it. Quote me on it. My brother helps me out with the sales, but I think they're about $2. So, whoops. So wherever you go, don't overpay for these cells. So it costs you $2 to $3 to get 12 of them, and you're selling these for $2 each. That's 2 times 12 is $24. So for a $3 investment in the plastic, you sell them all, you make, what's that, almost at least $20. So that's one way to look at it. And maybe you're doing this on a bigger scale, so you want to buy in volume. Like, you want to buy 100 of those. You have to pay up more up front, but they're cheaper in the long run. All right, so the other things, I keep putting this away, the other things that can go in here are cabbage and broccoli. They're going to need about 8 weeks to get ready for the seed sale, and people will gladly pay $2 for, you know, a 6-pack of that. If you want to grow collards, you could do collards in here about 6 weeks, group of 2, or you could grow them in here, get them the size, pot them up, and then if you're selling a bigger collard or kale plant, you could get $2 a piece. That's going to take about 8 to 10 weeks. All right, so I covered the plants. I will put these in the video description with the time frames, and that will at least give you an idea of what is a basic selling package. Now, somewhere on here I had annual herbs. All right, so actually we're not done. We have annual herbs. Let me check for questions real quick. I'm just reading them. All good statements. So again, I love this because all your comments are really, really valuable. I got distracted and just started thinking about what you guys are doing. So it's wonderful. If you see questions, please respond like you are and help each other out. That's just wonderful. All right. Sue D, I want to grow beets, but in researching light requirements found conflicting data. Can they be grown mostly in shade, full sun, or medium light? So not mostly shade. The problem is everybody has a different definition for partial shade, somewhat shade, mostly shade, partial light, medium light, full sunlight. Your beets are going to need about at least 4 solid hours of sun. They may not develop great roots, for the beet, but they will certainly grow the greens that you can eat. But you really want 6 or 8 hours of full sun, in my opinion, for beets. All right. Empty nest gardens. Can I put straight into plastic greenhouse, or do I need to do it gradually? So that's a good question too. And I'll stress this one more time because it's so important. I don't want you to be growing for 6, 8, 10 weeks. Then you get your plants outside, the sun burns them and you lose everything. You have to acclimate them. So when they're inside, when plants first germinate, they're ready to go. They think they're outside. They can handle the sun. After growing for weeks indoors, they kind of become wimpy. They can't take the ultraviolet rays. So you have to slowly acclimate them. The question was, can I put them in a greenhouse? If your greenhouse is super clear plastic where the UV rays can go right through it and hit your plant, no. If it is, somewhat transparent, some of the UV rays are blocked, you could go ahead and do that. But it really depends on the covering on your greenhouse and what it does with UV rays. To be safe, I would probably do it slowly for a couple of days, and you probably don't have to do it for the whole week. Then it could go right into the greenhouse, but just be careful. The other thing too, for startup costs, I see people talking about seeds. Let me get that out of the way. You are not going to necessarily have to use every seed this year. So your startup costs are the containers, maybe the grow light system for sure, soil, starting mix, and seeds. Save your seeds in a Ziploc bag indoors. Whatever you don't use, you'll definitely be able to use them again next year. So when you're thinking about startup costs, seeds can last easily 3 years or longer. So if you want to buy something in bulk, you could do that. Or if you're buying a seed pack and it just has, sometimes like kohlrabi will have like 500 seeds in there. You're not going to do all 500, but they're going to be good for 2 or 3 years. So you're going to save money over time. All right, annual herbs. So your annual herbs can't take a frost typically. Cilantro can, but I throw that in there. So you're going to have basil, cilantro, and dill, 4 or 5 seeds per cell like this to get them growing. And you want to start them 6 to 8 weeks before they get to the sale. Now, sometimes basil grows slowly, but once it takes off and it's warm, it gets large. Again, you're going to want, a basil plant that's about this tall. You're going to want cilantro that's about that tall too, and dill that looks like that. You don't want them overgrown because cilantro will start to bolt, but you want them a good size so people look at it and say, I'm getting a good deal with this. If you want to add something interesting and be able to bring in more money, there's not just one kind of basil. We all pretty much grow the sweet basil for pesto and stuff like that for salads, but you can get Thai basil, lime basil, lemon basil, a licorice tasting basil. You can get purple basil, ruffled basils. You can get all kinds of different basils. Basil. So you could grow 6 or 8 different kinds of herbs that people don't see elsewhere, and you could possibly charge more for those, $3. I might do something like that, 4 for $10, so that they get a break on it. All right. Any questions before I go to the next part? Where are we at? 40 minutes. All right. So I think we're doing okay. Any questions on what you might grow or how you might grow them? I, called this kind of an overview with all the steps, and it's kind of an overview because you have to do it for the first time. Take notes as you're doing this. Definitely take notes on the starting dates, how they're growing, and all that kind of stuff. Well, you wanted attention. Do I need seller permits to sell the plants? The question is, the answer is I don't know. Every state is different, but typically if you're just doing a yard sale or a plant yard sale, you probably don't, but I can't answer that 100%. You have to kind of, look at it. Some places, there's rules like, if you do a yard sale, whatever, once a month or once a year, you don't have to pay sales tax. If you're doing it more as a business and you're going to locations and shows, you have to pay a sales tax on what you're selling, so it depends. But this whole video is about, doing a home plant yard sale for a weekend. If you grow and get bigger, you're going to have to check it out. All right. Just checking. All right. So that sets up the plants, and that sets up how you advertise for the sale, and it gives you some idea of the work you're going to have to do. So it is work. So don't be afraid to, be confident in the price that you're setting, because you're putting a lot of work into this. So we talked about indoor plants have to get acclimated to the outdoors. That's going to be a 7-day process. So you have to incorporate that into your plan. We talked about you growing in 6-packs. You pot up to the 10-ounce cups. And then while your plants are outside getting used to the sun or starting to grow, you're going to have to bring them in when frost comes. Now, we're talking about growing indoors, and that's really the best way, especially in Maryland Zone 7. You may have warmer weather out there, so you can do a combination of planting in your cells. You take them outside. The days are 40, 50, 60 degrees. The nights are when the cold comes. You bring these in at night, and you can do your whole growth in your transplants by just moving stuff in and out doors. Now, that might seem like a lot, but remember, there's 72 cells here. If you did 10 of these, which takes some time to move them in and out, but not that much, that's 720 plants, potentially, times $2. What is that? $1,440. So it adds up pretty fast. And the biggest thing that you're probably going to have to do is just get your neighborhood used to you doing these plant sales. It really, really works. And we've already seen people talking about how much they made. So, making $250 is wonderful. Maybe you make more. Maybe you make that $1,000. All right. Let's just talk about feeding too. So if you're potting up, I've talked about, and you'll have to check out my videos on sterilizing the starting mix. I have videos on how to grow all this, beyond the scope of this 1 hour. When you're potting up, it's okay to use any inexpensive potting mix that has some fertilizer in it. And when you're going to have your plants going outside, you don't really have to worry about fungus gnats, because once your plants are outside, there's risks of different insects coming in and stuff like that. Anyway, you want to start fertilizing really well in the last couple of weeks before your show, so your plants are healthy. So what I would recommend is fish emulsion at whatever strength it talks about, at least one time. Then maybe some dilute fertilizer. It's going to vary a little bit. But the point that I want to stress is after your seeds germinate in here, they've been growing about 10 days. Every 10 to 14 days, dilute fertilizer. It could be the chemical types. They're not going to hurt your plant. They're not a problem at all. Could be the organic types. The benefit to the chemical types indoors is that they don't have any smell. They give your plant everything they need. Once you go outside, I do recommend the organic, because it really doesn't matter. Just give them the fish emulsion. They're going to do really, really well. But you want to keep a feeding schedule in place. You're definitely looking for a little more nitrogen. So that would be the fish emulsion at full strength, so that your plants stay green, the leaf growth is there, and they look really, really healthy. Any questions on that? Just checking through real quick. And it's, I mean, it looks like in some, like in my area, we don't have any shortages right now of seeds. I mean, I also sell seeds at my seed shop and we're fully stocked. So you can find stuff there. And if you ever have a problem with germination or an issue, just, you know, send us an email and my brother takes care of it. But you might be in a place where maybe transplants are going to be hard to get or people are tired of the same old transplant. So when those customers are coming and your friends are coming by and you're chatting with people, start asking them, what would you like me to grow for you for the fall or for next spring? And you just keep a list, because pretty soon you may have a nice little side business and you're making yourself some money, and you know, who couldn't use a little extra money? One thing, well, let me grab this because someone just talked about sweet potatoes. So these are my sweet potatoes. I have a video on how to do these. These are purple Stokes. So I don't know, there's probably, I don't even know how to get this in camera. There's probably 40 slips growing here. When these are to size, they're going to go into water. I could plant a slip up into this, sell these, you know, for $1 a plant, already rooted sweet potatoes. So that's another avenue. And you can get different kinds of sweet potatoes that people aren't going to, you know, find, and maybe sell those. All right, we're going to start wrapping up now. I'm going to talk about disease prevention. So any questions about what I talked about, start throwing them out there. I'll see if I can answer them. Yeah, and Steve from the Garden just kind of reinforces it's a good idea to ask customers what they like. Start a relationship, collect those emails, talk with people, see what they're doing. And maybe, you know, sometimes if you find the right person, you can then grow plants for them June, July, August, and they'll come by and they'll pick them up. You never know what's going to happen. I wanted to do this, you know, live video so that it'd be more of a conversation. I could answer questions, but really encourage you to try it out. All right. Joy at Home's stratifying lupines, milkweed, and lavender. That will help a whole lot. Kirsten Tuggle says, fish emulsion at half strength. Indoors, because you only have a little bit of soil in here, I don't like using fish emulsion at full strength. So any fertilizer I'm using indoor, any water soluble type, I try and cut it back so it's, you know, well below a 5.55, closer to a 1.11 NP and K, and just a little bit less is better, because you can always add more fertilizer over time at low doses, versus if you accidentally put in too much, then you have a problem. Urban Chicken Mama. So this is a good question. Should I still do warm weather crops even though I'm doing the sale in May and will barely be 50? So you can do the warm weather crops, but I think I would educate the person buying from you about, you know, you want the soil temperatures to be about 50 degrees. It's better when it's 70 degrees. And maybe at that point, you're selling smaller warm weather crops. So they're to grow indoors. You know, when the plants are like about this big, it's okay to put them on a windowsill because they've done a lot of growing. They're going to get less light, but they're less dependent on light when they're larger. Anyway, you would be explaining to them that these warm weather crops need to stay indoors for another week or 2 or 3 before you would put them outside. Or you could do a cool weather sale of the cool weather crops earlier. Some people do that. And then you give everybody, you know, in the bag when they buy the cool weather crops, a flyer that says we'll be selling the warm weather crops on June 1st. So you can advertise that way too. And then Mountain Creek Homestead says most herbs need cold stratification. In the video I did, any plant that's generally, this is general. First of all, you can stratify every seed. I don't know of any seed that's going to be harmed by giving it a chill period. But most of your perennials drop seed in the fall. They hit the ground. They are designed so that they need a cold period before they sprout and germinate. If not, they would sprout, germinate, the cold frost comes, kills them off. So it's kind of a survival mechanism. But generally speaking, if your seed, if your plant is native to a place with cold winters, then it's going to need a stratification period. And Irene Wong says, I've been growing for 7 years and she can't successfully grow melon, winter squash, squash bugs, cucumber beetles. Recommend them. So I will be talking more about pest prevention. I think, well, actually, the live ramblings, the previous one, I think number 4, I talked about that if you want to check that out. But cucumber beetles are easily managed by putting insect dust on the outer leaves of your cucumber plants. They will run through there. You can't get rid of them, but you can just knock them back, and it does minimal damage to your pollinators and good insects. But you mentioned in that winter squash, like the Hubbard squash. I forgot, you could butternut squash, you could do acorn squash, you could do winter squash. That is something that sometimes you don't see at the big box stores. So you could add those in too. And they would be something that you would start 4 or 5 weeks before the plant sale also. All right, so let's wrap up with this. These are oils, and this is peppermint oil. I hope that you don't have to spray your plants, but it's possible with the cold weather, with rains, with humidity, that diseases become an issue. And the best way to really manage it, I think, is using peppermint oil on the outer leaves, undersides of your transplants. And that just helps manage potential issues. More so for, I think, peppers and tomatoes, because leaf spot hangs around in these cold temperatures and rainy temperatures. How you would use this, I mean, the general recipe I use is 1 teaspoon of peppermint oil to 2 teaspoons per gallon. In the case of seedlings, I would just do 1 teaspoon, gallon of water, a tablespoon or 2 of the Castile type soaps, test spray. So I would take 1 tomato plant, 1 eggplant, 1 squash plant, soak it down with the spray that you make, wait 48 hours, spray them again, wait 48 hours, and if they look fine, then you have a nice way to kind of manage potential issues, and it's not going to damage your plants. I wouldn't spray this on basil or lettuces unless you test it out. A lot of times people will spray it, say, on kale. It's a really tough leaf. They think, oh, it's safe for kale. I can spray it on anything. You don't. You have to check it out. I sell these oils at my seed shop. This is really good for managing cucumber mites, spider mites, and really works on the Mexican bean beetle. I've got videos on that. I'll be talking more about that. But you're going to have to keep an eye on the plants that you're getting ready that in that 2-week period before they're going to go to the sale. You don't want to be selling plants that have leaf spot on there or any kind of disease issue. So keep an eye on them. And Adriana, I do have a video on growing ginger. I had great success with ginger. I got more ginger than I could use. I have it started. I'll be doing a video on that again this year. And the peppermint oil, just to be clear, I mean, certainly if you want to buy it from me, we have it, but you want to make sure it's 100% oil. You don't want to get any kind of like extract that you get in the baking aisle of like the grocery stores and stuff like that. You want 100% oil. All right, so we are officially done with this. I'm going to hang around for 5 more minutes or so if you have any more questions. And I really hope you give this a try. I had a lot of fun. This was probably, I think my YouTube channel is 12 or 13 years old. For about 1 or 2 years into my YouTube channel, and a couple of years before I even started it, this is what I would do, and it was a lot of fun. So, and I easily made at $1 a plant, you know, over a weekend and at the flea market at the giant parking lot, $1,000, and it works, you know. And after doing it for years, people would show up looking for me. They would come. I would always get the same spot at the flea market in their neighborhood. And then when I stopped and I would just go shop at the flea market, people would come up and say, "Oh, you're not doing it this year." And I would explain to them, "No, I'm not doing it." But you're really going to build relationships. And this could be something you could do regularly to kind of fund your gardens. Megan Nichols, I did a sale last year and it was great. I'm terrified that it won't be so lucky this year. Well, if it was great, it's going to be very good, at least. I'm sure of that. And if it's terrible, maybe you donate the plants. But I would think about doing the sale in your neighborhood, on your property. And really, if you have extra, plan to do a sale the next week at a friend or family's neighborhood. And it's a whole different group of people. So I think you'll be able to sell whatever you guys decide to grow. William, when to start pepper seeds in Maryland? I started some of mine now. So they'll go out May 15th, count back, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And that's kind of when I start my hot peppers. And I count back 8 or 10 weeks. That's when I start my sweet pepper plants. Oh, well, good luck, Adriana, with your list. That's a good idea too. I don't know if some of you saw that, but she's taking pre-orders. So that's a good way to do it. All right. I think we'll call it a day. So I will put this into the description probably over the next hour or so, just so you can kind of look back, see what plants I was talking about, look at the time frames. But most importantly, give it a try. Start small. You don't need, 1,000 plants. Maybe just see how it goes. And just enjoy yourself. I mean, you have a lot of fun, I think, interacting with people. Hopefully COVID continues to fade and it's less of an issue, but you will be outside, and we've all got used to kind of managing that. But give it some practice. Take notes so you know when you're starting. Take notes on what sells and collect information from the people that are coming to your sale so you can get in touch with them, maybe for a midsummer sale or a later fall sale. All right. Thanks.